Hello, thanks for joining me. I'm at Cilrhedyn churchyard again, which if you follow my channel you will know is being restored after decades of neglect. I'm going to tell the fascinating story of one of the rectors here, the controversial and once famous, if not infamous, Reverend James Hughes Jenkins, who was rector here for 22 years, from 1911 to 1933. Previous rectors such as Benjamin Lewis, who was detained in an asylum, and James Banks Herbert, who had to deal with the tithe war, had a difficult time in this parish. They were followed by two solid and quiet churchmen, and things calmed down at Cilrhedyn Church until 1911, when J.H. Jenkins arrived, and suddenly the rector of the parish was in the newspapers again. I'll explain the controversy shortly, but first let's look at his early life, which explains why he was such an interesting and unlikely person to wind up here. He was born in 1862 in Aberdare, the son of Benjamin Jenkins, a coal miner who had spent some time in America, and his wife Margaret. He was one of 4 sons, at least one of whom also went down the pit, but James, at aged 18, was destined to spend his life above ground. He became a pupil teacher, the system then used to train teachers within the school from the ranks of pupils themselves. He used his education to get himself a job as a journalist in Liverpool. While he was there, he was living at Edgerton Road, Toxteth. He knew a fellow senior Welsh journalist and accountant called Daniel Griffiths, who was also known as the Bard Brythonfryn. He lived on the same road and was born in Kenarth, and through him the young James met his daughter Anna Louisa, who became his wife. They were married at Liverpool Anglican Brides Church in 1888. As if this wasn't enough of a departure from the background of previous rectors of Cilrhedyn, who'd followed the usual path of education at Oxford and then ordination into the Anglican Church, James Hughes Jenkins went in a very unusual direction. He left Liverpool and became a Baptist minister in Rawtenstall in Lancashire. In case you think I've made a mistake, no, this really was him. He was down as a Baptist minister in the 1891 census, aged 27, and living with Annie Louisa, his wife, then 25, and his 1-year-old daughter, Dydddan, who sadly died in infancy. On the 1st of January 1892, it was reported in the Cambrian newspaper that he had accepted the pastorate of a church at Horwich, near Bolton. But in the same year, later on, he was made a deacon in the Church of England. What caused this sudden shift from Baptist to Anglican is a mystery. That he was accepted into the Church of England fold in such short time is also remarkable. But a year later he was ordained priest and was curate at Llangennau near Bridgend until 1900. 2 years into his curacy, he wrote to the Glamorgan Gazette to correct their journalism over a misreported version of events over the use of Welsh in the church. In 1903 his father died. At this time the Reverend Jenkins was curate of Taff's Well, where he stayed until 1909, and where his daughter Aylwyn was born. His leaving was marked by a function at Taff's Well Drill Hall, where appreciation was expressed for his 9 years of service, with the local schoolmaster and Welsh Baptist minister bearing testimony to his high character. A photograph of him appeared with the report, showing his strong face adorned with a big moustache. Traditionally, clergy in the Church of England were clean-shaven or bearded, but the Reverend Jenkins doesn't seem to have been bothered by that tradition. His next appointment was as curate of St Mark's, Newport, Gwent, and now things got a bit lively. He soon got mentioned in the press. The Reverend J.H. Jenkins, curate of St Mark's Church, Newport, is making a good impression in that borough. His addresses to churchmen are marked by deep thought and originality. Mr Jenkins, who was stationed at Taff's Well prior to going to Newport, is a fluent speaker in both Welsh and English, and is an ardent Welsh nationalist. This good start didn't last. He addressed a meeting of dock workers during an industrial dispute. He sided entirely with the workers, and the employers complained to the Bishop of Llandaff. The bishop wrote to him and complained of his very strong words and apparently misleading language, to which the Reverend Jenkins responded. On top of which his correspondence was leaked to the press. I wonder who leaked it. It must be remembered the Reverend Jenkins had been a journalist. He knew he could get public opinion on his side using the press. Not the quiet and diplomatic behaviour expected of a mere curate by his bishop. Now his card was marked. A few months later his house was burgled. His wife's jewellery, some ornaments, and almost all his food were stolen. He was only at Newport for a couple of years. His next appointment was as Rector of Cilrhedyn. I suspect the Bishop of Llandaff was happy to see the back of him, and the Bishop of St David's probably thought burying him in a deeply rural area where there were no organised labour disputes, strikes or political agitations would keep him out of the press. If he did, he was wrong. James Hughes Jenkins was not a man to keep quiet, especially if he saw injustice. He seems to have had a period of settling in before he started to make his presence felt. The Rector of Cilrhedyn was a Socialist, and he didn't feel that church and politics should be separate. Far from it. In 1913 this advert appeared in the press, urging the Welsh reader to buy Tarian y Gweithiwr, the Workers' Shield, a socialist newspaper which featured weekly articles by the Rector of Cilrhedyn. Those who didn't buy the paper could still see reports of his sermons. This example was in the Carmarthen Journal of June 1917, where he criticised the government's handling of labour disputes and called on the churches to have a say in the rebuilding of the country and society after the Great War. In the same year, this report of one of his sermons shows that he took the side of the farmer against the war agricultural committees. Farming, the biggest industry in the area, now found an ally in the rector. He encouraged the setting up of a local branch of the NFU, but his real focus was not the farmer himself, but the farm labourer. He said the agricultural labourer was a skilled workman and as such deserved wages paid to skilled men. His speech drew cheers and roars of applause. He also stood up for women. Speaking at a Church and Chapel United meeting, he called for both church and chapel to better uphold the Christian idea of womanhood. This meant equal pay for equal work for women. He also had a pop at the Newcastle Emlyn Board of Guardians over their treatment of Thomas Davis, a pauper under their care who had died after alleged neglect. At the graveside he said, "Thomas, we hope you have now seen the pleasant land and the King in his beauty. Tell him that we around here were so busy singing hymns and saving money that we didn't know him a bit as the poor cripple of Pen Walk, but we'll do our best for Mary Ann." The Reverend J. H. Jenkins, pictured here by St Tylo's stone in Cilrhedyn churchyard, was a powerful preacher, something usually associated more with nonconformist ministers than priests of the Church of England, but then he had been a nonconformist minister. He was truly ecumenical and preached in chapels locally, officiated at funerals in chapels of every kind, and was able to fill Cilrhedyn Church, some feat given most in the district had been strictly chapel-goers for a long time. He preached well in Welsh, something which certainly added to his appeal. He kept links to his roots in Aberdare, and wrote the foreword to this book, and kept up articles for his Welsh-language socialist newspaper. It was the Welsh language which got him back into the papers over church matters and into conflict with church officials. In 1918, at a service in Newcastle Emlyn Church, the Archdeacon of Cardigan announced he would speak to the all-Welsh congregation in English and then speak a few words of Welsh. The Rector of Cilrhedyn immediately pointed out there were only Welsh speakers present, so it would be better just to proceed in Welsh. "But do you understand English?" said the Archdeacon. "Yes," replied the Reverend Jenkins. I do understand a bit of English, but as we have just been addressing Almighty God in Welsh, I think that language ought to be quite good enough for us. The Archdeacon's address followed, in Welsh. I haven't been able to find anything about James Hughes Jenkins' life after the First World War, as records are not available. He died in 1933, aged 71, and his wife, Annie Louisa, died in 1954, aged 88. They are buried together here at Cilrhedyn by the ruins of what was their church, with a flower holder on the grave given by the congregation. Until recently, the grave was buried in undergrowth, and like them, forgotten. I think the Reverend Jenkins is worth remembering. He was once known throughout Wales for his outspokenness in defence of the poor, those badly treated, and the Welsh language. I hope you found his story interesting. Thank you for watching to the end. Please do give this video a thumbs up, have a look at my other videos, comment, and share with anyone you think would like to watch. And you can find out when new videos come up by hitting subscribe and the bell next to it. Until next time, diolch am wylio. Thank you for watching.